What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of High Floor Football. My name is Sam Wagman. I am your host, and with me, as he is every week, is my dashing co-host himself, JR. Man, how you doing? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. We are 1 week closer to the season, which means I'm doing, a little bit better than I was last week. So I think we're all in the same boat. We're all waiting for it. Preseason football was fun this weekend. It was kind of nice how they spread it out. It was Friday, there was Saturday, there was a game on Sunday. So that was nice. I think that we're all itching for it to really get started though. And I have my draft with my home league this week in Arizona. Next weekend, we all have drafts coming up that we're marking on the schedule. So we're all going to be busy and no complaints. How about you?
I also have three drafts this week. My most important home league draft is tomorrow night, so I'm excited for that. A bunch of the guys are getting together at one of our friends' houses to do that. About seven out of the 10 of us are in town, so I'm excited for that. But I didn't really watch that much preseason football this weekend. I was at the Fantasy Football Expo, which you have now declined to go to for 2 straight years. Not holding it against you, kind of holding it against you. But
I was busy watching preseason, I guess. I don't know.
Saw our boy Toronto Dave over there. Dave, let me tell you, one of the nicest guys in this industry. I got to tell you, it was so fun to get to see him, meet him finally. So, look, I had a blast. My voice, I requested to push the show one day so I could kind of get my voice back to normal. I'm sure it didn't hurt you. You're moving into a new apartment, so I'm sure you've been plenty busy yourself. But look, speaking of preseason, what exactly has stood out to you? Because like you said, you spent the weekend watching some of the preseason games. So what did you see that stood out to you?
Well, really, I don't mean to toot your horn, honestly, but just coincidentally, two of the guys that you really like, and Damian Pierce and George Pickens were, highlights of the weekend. George Pickens, it was kind of a small sample size, but it was after everything that had been happening in camp, just seeing it in person, and not in person, but seeing it live and seeing him make, that kind of play on that ball, which was just perfect. He was some people were calling for a push off. Who cares? It was a great play, got his feet in bounds. It was an awesome touchdown catch. He stood out for sure because, like I said, it's not just a big play. It's not just the preseason game. It's the combination of the preseason reports, what everyone's saying about him, and then seeing the production on the field. So he was one. Damian Pierce was the other. And it seems, today I saw Lovie Smith said something like, we're going to play our best running back, that, whoever plays the best in the preseason, which does lean towards Damian Pierce. Marlon Mack was complimenting him. Rex Burkhead, I think we all kind of expected to be more of a utility back there. So Damian Pierce and Pickens were two of the big ones. I also thought Kenny Pickett looked really good in his small time on the field. I also heard Mason Rudolph might be on the move, so that clears out one of the quarterbacks in that room. But Kenny Pickett's kind of gotten a bad rap because he was the only quarterback taken in the first round. We all kind of have been taking shots at him in general because it felt like a little bit of a reach. That being said, I think he looked good in his first sample, and they've got a lot of weapons on that team. So if he can kind of break through, I think that he was exciting.
Yeah, so I watched the Pickens and Pierce highlights. Like I said, didn't get to really watch anything this weekend. I did get a chance while we were out to lunch one of the days to watch some of the plays from the Bears Chiefs game. Was sitting in a bar with our buddy Dave Kluge and some of the other guys from Football Guys, as well as a couple others. And I saw this very nice pass from Justin Fields to Darnell Mooney, dropped it right in the breadbasket. That was really nice to see.
That was a really nice play. Also, the Eagles, because I don't know if you got to see them, but first drive of the season, Jalen Hurts 8 straight passes.
I saw the highlights.
Yeah,
I saw the highlights, and unfortunately, the only thing I actually saw live was the Zach Wilson injury. Wilson injury. It was playing up on the big screen at Centennial Park. We were having our Friday night party, but I was too busy playing cornhole to actually watch anything else. All I heard were people running around saying Zach Wilson tore his ACL, which of course was, later proven not to have happened at all. Goes to show you the dangers of inaccurate reporting from a fantasy doctor that will remain unnamed.
He's in my Scott Fishbowl league, actually.
Interesting. I hope he's not watching this. In any case, the preseason has been good to see as well. I do caution you not to read too much into things, Isaiah Pacheco, but I've seen
Why?
people. I saw someone take him in round 8 of a mock draft that I was doing today, and that's just kind of
Sure.
maddening to me.
I don't disagree with with that. You don't want to overdo it. At the same time, I've seen some people, fantasy community on Twitter. We're all on Twitter. I've seen some people acting like you ignore everything from the preseason, ignoring everything until the season starts. That is like so whack to me. I don't understand that. I mean, you got to take every data point you can get. It's like saying we ignore the combine. Is the combine everything? No. Is it a data point? Yes. You add it into everything. You think about how that all makes sense. You make sense of it all. The same with the preseason. You don't have to overreact to everything. But for instance, Antonio Gibson, who we can talk about for just a quick second before it gets started. Antonio Gibson, I was watching that Washington game, fumbles early on, goes onto the sideline. He's clearly distraught. Offensive linemen were over there trying to cheer him up because he knew this was a big mistake, something that he's had to work on. He led the NFL in fumbles last year. And some people on Twitter or analysts or whatever saying, ignore it. Who cares about Gibson? Gibson's one of my highest exposed running backs in all my best ball teams. I'm highly invested in Antonio Gibson.
I'm rubbing up on you.
I'm not ignoring that. He led the league in fumbles last year and he fumbled, and then Brian Robinson came in and looked great. So there are things that you have to take into account. Is it everything? No. But is it a data point? Absolutely. And I think that it's ignorant to act like it's not. So, I mean, kind of adding it all together to make sense.
Speaking of which, did you see the report that Antonio Gibson was out washing Ron Rivera's car after practice today?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Seems like that's what they have him doing. Like he's working with the kick return team. He's working with the punt team. He's working with special teams. He's Dave had a funny quote on the Football Guys mailbag show tonight that he was massaging Brian Robinson's calves because they were tight after practice today. Look, I mean, you make a great point. It's a data point. It shouldn't be taken as anything truly serious because it is the preseason. They could just be wanting to get Brian Robinson some game work, but Antonio Gibson is the guy who has been a borderline RB1 for the last 2 seasons. And I do think that he still has a major role. And look, he's been slipping to like the 9th and 10th round of drafts now. So if he's there, you should scoop him up. That's, RB3, RB4 priced for a guy who should give you at least RB2 production. And look, this, coming from me, I had him at RB6 going into the offseason. So obviously this is a little bit of a step down in terms of, where I once thought he was going to go. But look, the offseason is a long time. Things change. So definitely adjust, but he shouldn't be like completely off your board.
No, absolutely not. And one more point, just when we wrap up the Antonio Gibson talk, but it's not like you said. Did they want to get Ryan Robinson in? Sure. I mean, I don't think anybody's concerned with how much Brian Robinson was playing or him looking good. It's the correlation of things. Antonio Gibson leads the league in fumbles. I'm sure that was a focal point of his offseason to work on holding onto the ball. Gets out there in the first preseason game, drops the ball on the ground. His offensive coordinator was even quoted yesterday, damning it pretty much, saying, that is something we have to work on. We have to take care of the ball. And if you can't do that, that is going to be a problem. So the reason I'm so exposed to Antonio Gibson is because he goes at such a discount in the first place. So to your point, yes, if he continues to drop, I'm scooping him up if he's in the 8th, 9th round for sure. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the preseason for you, it's a data point.
Yep, but now that we have that, we can kind of get into the show. But before we do that, it is my job to shout out our sponsor for the show, Underdog Fantasy. And a reminder that now is the best time to go and play Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the place to go if you want to mock draft for money, bet some player props, and overall win tons of money. Go to Underdog now and enter into the Best Ball Mania 3 tourney that has a grand prize of $2 million to first place and $1 million to the highest regular season scorer to the winner for only $25. Use promo code HFF for a full 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. And, coming from both of us, we've been huge best ball guys this offseason. And, now that the offseason is winding down, both of us have kind of stopped putting our money in. But Underdog has not stopped. They released the Pomeranian 2 today or yesterday, and they also have Pomeranian 3 and 4, both with 100K guaranteed pools coming out next week and the week after. So I'm really excited for that. Underdog Fantasy, one of the best companies in the space, working on everything. Sportsbook coming, more games are coming. They are truly one of the best places that you can go to play right now. So that again, that is promo code HFF, and that'll get you 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. But let's get right into the show. Got a little overboard talking about some preseason talk, but let's go right into the main part of our show, which is, redraft, breakouts, and fades. So, in this one, we're using the ADP over at footballguys.com. You can find that at footballguys.com/ADP. It has everything you want. We use a combination of sites to put our ADP together, real-time sports, my fantasy league, fantasy football calculator. It all gets together and it gets combined with our expert rankings to create a product that has very accurate ADPs for redraft season. So we're going to be using that and referring to that. The link is in the description on the YouTube video, but let's get right into it. We're going to start with our quarterback breakouts, and right away, you have yours as a guy that you have been talking about all off season, but hasn't really been getting that rankings respect that he deserves. So why don't you go ahead and tell me about Trey Lance a little bit?
Yeah, my breakout QB is Trey Lance. I don't think it's necessarily an uncommon one. I think everyone's predicting Trey Lance to break out, at least have one of the safer floors in fantasy. And, I don't want to give away who yours is, but it's a similar comparison to your quarterback as well from last year, where, there are questions about Trey Lance's accuracy. There's questions about him as a passer. Does that necessarily impact his fantasy production? Potentially, but not altogether. With his rushing ability, he should have a safe floor. They have a ton of weapons in San Francisco with, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk's been lighting up training camp. They're going to have a strong run game, I think we would assume, with Kyle Shanahan and their offensive line. And, we didn't see too much of Trey Lance last year, but when we did, he did score fantasy points. So I think Trey Lance this year is a great option, especially at his ADP, which I couldn't really believe when we were talking about it, because like we just mentioned, an underdog. We've been playing best ball. He goes a little bit higher over there. Whereas, the ADP, it looks like, the combination of consensus on Football Guys, he is QB 11, which is behind Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, in between Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford. For me, I mean, Trey Lance should kind of be right up in that top 7 to 8 conversation instead of more in the 11 conversation, right near Jalen Hurts. I think Kyler Murray, I think he's got similar upside to those guys. He's also got great weapons. So Trey Lance at QB 11 feels like a steal to me. And, we'll see when kind of if redraft leagues catch up. I remember the year when Lamar Jackson came out and his second year, after his rookie season where he played a little bit at the end, but we were all kind of touting Lamar Jackson as this same thing where, he's got great rushing ability, not sure about him as a passer. You were able to scoop up Lamar Jackson in like the last round of redraft leagues that year because people are grabbing all the other quarterbacks. He was more of a risk, essentially. He won people leagues that year. I mean, he broke fantasy that year. So Trey Lance fits into that sort of category for me where the upside is just so high. And is there downside? Sure. But I think that the floor is safe enough to kind of keep him in the QB1 conversation regardless. And you might be finding yourself a league winner. So Trey Lance is my breakout quarterback and kind of leads into your guy as well. So
yep. And, my guy is someone I've been pushing all off season. I don't think it's much of a breakout anymore, but, Jalen Hurts is that guy for me. He kind of, comes into a situation where he absolutely has to break out this year. And by break out, he really has to show an improvement in his throwing to the point where the Eagles are comfortable giving him, the kind of extension that he would get on the open market next season. So he's going to be that guy this year. They've upgraded the offensive line for him from the juggernaut that it already was. They upgraded his receiving core and adding one of his best friends in A.J. Brown to this team. He already has Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert there as well as the most efficient running attack in the NFL. So everything is kind of set for Jalen Hurts to take a step forward. He ranked third in air yards per attempt and first in yards per dropback. So I am kind of all in on Jalen Hurts this year to kind of go forward. He showed a little bit of an issue while completing balls down the field last year, but he definitely can throw it. It's just he didn't have a lot of help. Devontae Smith, is not the kind of guy that can, beat double coverage. He's kind of the guy that wins on technique and route running. But as he didn't have a lot of help, that's going to change this year with AJ Brown there to draw a ton of coverage away. Plus, the fact that all three of them are separate threats on their own will force defenses to play a lot of man coverage, and all three of them are skilled at breaking man coverage. And wouldn't you know it, Jalen Hurts throws against man coverage at the fourth highest route in the NFL and has the 10th highest completion percentage in the NFL versus man coverage. So I'm ready for Jalen Hurts to take off this year and really show that he can improve to the point as a passer where the Eagles are comfortable giving him that massive extension next season and for him to be their quarterback of the future as they go into the Super Bowl window. Let's move on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm on the same page with you with Jalen Hurts. I'm glad that you said it because it was kind of a breakout last season, but the fact that he could go even higher, this year and kind of be that overall QB1, which seems to be in the realm of possibilities for him, is just huge. And like, we mentioned at the beginning, I think what people are most worried about with Jalen Hurts and with AJ Brown and with some of the other weapons in Philadelphia is, are they going to pass the ball more? And last year we saw such a trend. I mean, at the beginning of the season, it did look like that's what Nick Sirianni wanted to do, then realized he has better personnel to kind of just pound the rock, run the ball. They were the best rushing team in the NFL last season. But the start to this preseason, they came out, and I think that it was a statement. I think that they came out, they passed 8 times in a row, drove down the field, scored a touchdown, and proved that, we can do this through the air too. It's just scary what we can also do on the ground. So
yeah, and I went back last week and looked at Warren Sharp's football analysis. He does the run pass neutral rates for teams, and last year from weeks 1 to 6, the Eagles were 4th in the NFL in passing, passing percentage at a neutral rate. So they really did want to pass the ball. It was only over the course of the entire season that the Eagles obviously dropped to 32, to where they were literally doing it 50-50. They were, it was a coin flip every time, but they clearly showed that they wanted to run the ball and run it a lot. But like you said, Nick Sirianni wanted to pass the ball to start the year. He wants to pass the ball to start this year, and I definitely think that the Eagles will do that. When you account, for what you think that they'll, bring in as an improvement to their passing game, probably around 10% of an improvement. That's 550 pass attempts. That's more than enough to go around in this offense with only 3 guys who are really getting a target share in Brown, Smith, and Goddard. So I have all the faith that they can pull together there. Let's move on to the running backs. And your running back is Chase Edmonds. Let's hear about it.
It is. So my breakout's Chase Edmonds because I just feel like around where his ADP is, I choose him a lot more than some of the guys going around him. He's right at RB31 on the Football Guys consensus ADP. So a couple guys ahead of him, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 26, Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders, Damian Harris, and Kareem Hunt. I've found myself drafting Chase Edmonds above all of them. So that's up at like RB25. I mean, sometimes I pick some of those other guys. I don't mind Damian Harris. I don't mind Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, Tony Pollard in the right situations. But I do think that Chase Edmonds has just as high of upside as them. Miami prioritized getting him. He, got a pretty good sizable contract. I'm blanking on the top of my head. I want to say it's around like $6 million a year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. So got a decent sized contract for a running back, goes to Miami. Like I said, it's a priority. I thought, McDaniels gets in there. One of the first signings was Chase Edmonds. The guys they added around him in the running back room, I'm not worried about, Raheem Mostert, awesome talent. Love to see him stay healthy. We just haven't in a long time. And it's not the type of thing where it's like, oh, is injury prone or not? I mean, Raheem Mostert literally is never healthy. So he had to notify us a couple weeks ago that he is healthy and he'll be there. Sonny Michel is also in that backfield. Myles Gaskin, just guys I'm not so worried about. And I feel like Chase Edmonds is a good talent. Everybody was excited about him last year. He was being drafted around an RB2, RB3 last year, right on the border with him and James Conner. There was a discussion of kind of which one of them was the one to pick in Arizona. Unfortunately, Chase Edmonds got hurt. I think he only played 8 games, so about half the season, but just really wasn't himself that whole time. So I think this year could be the big breakout that could happen for him in a Miami offense with Tua and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Chase Edmonds. I think he's one of those options that we should be excited about. There's been nothing but positive buzz about him through camp. He has all the things that we're looking for in a running back. He's got the pass catching ability. He's actually got decent size. I think he's deceptively seems smaller. I mean, he's 5'9", 201 is what I'm seeing him listed as. Oh, hey, Joey.
Hi.
Hi, Joey. So, yeah, I'm excited about Chase Edmonds this year. I think that a breakout is very well in the realm of possibilities for him. And kind of what I said, there's almost a borderline with him where the guy's going after him. It's Devin Singletary, Rashad Penny, sorry, Sam, and Cordero Patterson, Ramondre Stevenson. All those guys have opportunity and ability to have great seasons as well, but that's kind of where I draw the line. I mean, after Chase Edmonds goes at that RB31-ish range, I'm looking at more wide receivers in that range unless I'm kind of trying to fill out a running back room. But I love Chase Edmonds as an RB3, and if I get him as my RB2, I'm just as happy with that. So going off the board at RB31 seems like a great value to me.
Yep. I like Chase Edmonds at that spot as well. Speaking of Joey, you should keep an eye out on Front Yard Fantasy's YouTube channel tomorrow around 4:15 p.m. Eastern time. There's a video coming out that might interest all of you. It's very good. In any case, definitely in on Chase Edmonds too. I have him ranked at, let's see, in my football guys rankings, he's at RB29 for me, so I'm just above consensus there. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Mike McDaniel rushing attack over there in Miami. If it's any bit as efficient as the offense that was ran in San Francisco, you want the running back that'll be there. And look, Raheem Mostert's going to be hurt by like the second half of week 2, and Sonny Michel is kind of dusty. I'm a little worried about goal line work going his way. I think that's probably what'll happen. It'll be some sort of split between him and Mostert until Mostert gets hurt. But I do think that Chase Edmonds will get all the passing work, and that's all we need to see from him to kind of draft him at that ADP. So going into my breakout running back, it's Saquon Barkley at RB11. And look, this isn't very complicated. On any given day, there's 2 running backs this year besides Jonathan Taylor who should be strongly considered to have the upside to be the RB1 overall this season in fantasy football. Those running backs are Christian McCaffrey and they're Jonathan Taylor, or not Jonathan Taylor, and they're Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, it was obviously the RB1 in his rookie season, and just kind of over the past few years has had injury after injury after injury unluckiness. So, first it was the high ankle sprain in 2019 that cost him about 8 games. Then it was the ACL tear in week 2 of last year. I mean, or in 2020. And then he had another little low ankle sprain last year. So he's had a little bit of unlucky injuries the last few years. But the good news is he's 2 years out from that ACL tear. And that's where the fun starts. Because once you get to that range, Edwin Porras over at Fantasy Points states that your range of motion is almost completely back to normal, and you have about the same re-injury rate as any other running back in the league at that point to just suffer an injury point blank once you're that far out from the Achilles tear. So with Saquon, it's not about the injury. It's about the team with him. And guess what? He's got a new coach in Brian Dable. He's got an offensive line upgrade in Evan Neal. And he's got some wide receivers in Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson, and hopefully the corpse of Kenny Golladay to hopefully draw some attention off of him. But best of all, look at the preseason videos that Saquon's put out and been in this past month. He looks like he's in the best shape of his career. And I know how big, a faux pas it is to say that, about a guy in the preseason. But this is Saquon Barkley we're talking about. He looks as powerful as he's ever been. And I do think that he gets to the point where he needs to. He ranked 14th in opportunity share last year at 63%. And he also had the 8th highest target share in the NFL for running backs at 13.3%. Saquon has all the intangibles to be able to make it into the top 10 and quite possibly even the top 5 this year as a running back in fantasy football. And honestly, he's got the highest ceiling after Christian McCaffrey. I'm really all in on Saquon. He's my RB7 right now. And I haven't felt this confident about Saquon since his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on Saquon. I'm, who's your next breakout going to be, Sam? You're just picking all these guys from the top, man. You're killing me. So Saquon's ADP's RB9. You're saying he's going to go RB7, but you're saying he's got the overall upside to be the overall RB1. So I agree with that. I'm picking Saquon end of the first, early second right now. So I can't disagree with you. I think that's where he belongs. Same sort of argument, like you said, for Christian McCaffrey. When the only argument is that is he going to stay healthy? I mean, don't we wonder that with every single running back? So when he's got all these tools, the skill set, the situation that lends towards him having a monster season, I don't feel like we can really hold the health against him. Like you said, last season was kind of like a freak situation. I mean, that second injury, tripped on someone's foot, didn't he? So, I mean, that happening again, who knows? So I'm all in on taking Saquon where he's going and a little bit earlier as well. So moving on to the breakout wide receivers here.
Yeah.
Let's see. So mine, another guy that I don't think you're going to disagree with too much. I've got Devontae Smith as my breakout wide receiver. Just, again, I'm kind of looking at it more towards where these guys are going in their ADP. Can they do a lot better than that? I mean, I think Devontae Smith should be more in that top 24 conversation, like the wide receiver 2 conversation. He's right now looking like he's at wide receiver 37. Was it updated today? So Devontae Smith, wide receiver 37 on Football Guys ADP, which drops him back a little bit further. And I'm surprised to see that. I mean, there are just so many guys that I think that he kind of belongs in the conversation with, where he's 8-10 wide receivers behind them. Gabriel Davis, wide receiver 27. I would have a tough time making the decision between Gabriel Davis and Devontae Smith, or Darnell Mooney and Devontae Smith. I mean, I think that's also an interesting conversation. You have Mooney, the wide receiver 1 in his offense, where we're assuming Devontae Smith won't be the top option in his, but I think we would expect the Eagles offense to be a little bit more potent than the Bears. So I think there's a conversation there. Juju Smith-Schuster and Devontae Smith. Juju's going 8 wide receivers ahead of him. So I think that Devontae's got a good opportunity to break out. What has been used against him is, unfortunately, Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase had 2 of the best rookie wide receiver seasons of all time. Jalen Waddle broke the rookie reception record, and Jamar Chase broke fantasy for rookie wide receivers. Yeah. I mean, so it sucks that Devontae Smith had to kind of come in with those 2 in terms of his situation. Do I think he's just as talented as, for sure, a Jalen Waddle? And, I don't know. Jamar Chase is really good, so I don't want to, break any borders there. But I think Devontae is really, really talented. And last year, watching a lot of Eagles games, as we do, we watch, all the games, but watching a lot of Eagles games closely, I think Devontae was really hurt by not having somebody opposite him. I mean, like you talked about with Jalen Hurts. I mean, there were times where Jalen Reagor wasn't getting off the line of scrimmage, and not to pile on top of him. It's just, that's really tough to be opposite that when you come in, you just won the Heisman, you go borderline top 10, everybody knows who you are, you're a big deal, everybody's talking about your weight, there's a lot of attention on you, and then you come in and there's really nobody else to take that attention in the Eagles offense. And so Devontae's still putting up over 900 yards in the season that he did, I think was impressive, and he had plenty of boom games, nothing crazy, but he had, 2 games with over 19 points, 2 games over 20 points, 3 over 19, 2 over 20. So, I mean, those are 5-6 good games. There were some bad ones in between. But again, we were talking about a low volume passing offense with a Jalen Hurts, a rookie head coach, and a rookie wide receiver 1. So going to look drastically different this year. And I expect Devontae to really benefit from it. I don't know if you've seen some of the camp reports about it, but I mean, Devontae was out last week with, minor groin injury. He came back this week and what was it?
Looked good. Looked
Yeah,
very
he
good.
came back this week and all the reports were like Devontae's back. Everybody was like, this is like he's stepping up. And all the reports prior to that were Jalen Hurts can't stop targeting AJ Brown. And that's fine. I think we all expect that to happen. But there was a little bit quiet on the Devontae Smith front, whereas came back, he's feeling healthy again, and right away the reports were wow. Because what's going to happen is when you have a guy like AJ Brown on the field and Dallas Goedert, like you said, it's just going to open up so much more space. And Devontae is somebody that no cornerback wants to be one-on-one with Devontae Smith. I mean, he is a technician. He is very talented. So I'm excited about him. I think he belongs more in that top 24 conversation than in the top, 40 conversation. So I love taking him where he's at. I'm drafting a lot of Devontae Smith. I have a hard time not to when he's around. I mean, the ADP right now is behind DeAndre Hopkins. I love DeAndre Hopkins. Like he's maybe one of my favorite players over the past decade. But he's out 6 games, and as good as he is, I mean, I'm taking Devontae Smith over him. Devontae Smith is ready to go right now in what I expect to be a good offense. So some of the guys he's going behind, I just don't necessarily agree with. Hunter Renfrow, Amari Cooper, Adam Thielen, who we'll talk about in a little bit on my end, Juju. I like Devontae Smith. I think he belongs more in the top 24. So he's my breakout. I would be taking him where he's at and feel very comfortable with it and feel comfortable even reaching on him more in like that, like I said, 24 to 30 range.
Yeah, and I'm with that as well. I definitely think that Devontae Smith is the second target in this offense rather than Dallas Goedert. Goddard's more of a middle of the field kind of break the field open, but Devontae Smith and AJ Brown are the 2 perimeter guys that'll play the X and the Z in this offense, and Devontae can really get down the field, and he should be the guy that Jalen Hurts is throwing those deep out routes and kind of deep crossers to the middle of the field. That's where Devontae will shine. He'll shine at getting those first downs as well. So he can do a little bit of everything, but he really is a skilled route runner. Moving on to mine, Rashad Bateman at wide receiver 32 is another guy who I'm extremely high on. Had a little bit of an off rookie season with only 46 receptions for 515 yards and a single touchdown. But then again, that's sharing a field with Marquise Hollywood Brown and record-setting Mark Andrews. Now, it was a little bit of a weird situation for the Ravens last season. First of all, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards lost within a few weeks of each other to season-ending ACL injuries in July last year. Unfortunate, not really their fault. Kind of put the Ravens behind the 8 ball a little bit there. So they were forced to deal with guys like Devontae Freeman and Tyson Williams for their running game. Not only that, Ronnie Stanley went down. A couple other guys on their O-line went down. They were playing from behind because their defense got supremely injured. They were just injured all over the place. And guess what? That necessitated a very pass-heavy approach for the Ravens last year. They were at 60. They were almost at a 60% clip in the NFL in run pass rate at the neutral at neutral. So they were ranked 9th in that category last year. Passed 665 times. That's a lot for the Ravens. This is a team that passed about 200 times less in 2020. So that's a huge deal. And with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards coming back this year, people kind of thought that the Ravens would be a little less pass heavy. Add in the fact that Marquise Hollywood Brown is gone. They didn't really draft anyone to replace them. That all kind of factors into people thinking that this pass attack would be less heavy. Let me tell you, it's not going to be. Here's the problem. J.K. Dobbins is still a little bit behind schedule. Gus Edwards is still a little bit behind schedule. And the Ravens found that throwing in that situation kind of helped a little bit because really nobody can guard Mark Andrews. And the best part is you have an outside receiver that can really play the X role now well and much better than Hollywood Brown ever did. Hollywood was really good at vertical go routes and getting down the field and getting open, but he wasn't a good route technician and he wasn't good at kind of opening up the field for the other receivers and Andrews to get open. Andrews just kind of had to be a superhero and was a product of being targeted a ton. Now, I still think that's going to happen. Hollywood Brown had a 27% target share last year next to Mark Andrews. Like that's a huge number. Someone has to come in and take all that, right? Like it's going to be Bateman. Bateman's going to come in and take nearly all of that target share right away. And he'll definitely build on the 15.8% target share that he had last year. And he should definitely be a red zone option as well. Look, Bateman is a much better route runner than Hollywood ever was. Like I said, he was afforded a ton of cushion, 5.88 yards per route run was afforded to him. That's ranked first in the NFL. Like if they give him that again, he's gonna have a dominant season. Add to the fact that his contested catch rate was top 5 in the NFL at 64%, and you have a big recipe for success with Lamar just throwing up some of these deep balls to him as well. So Bateman is a guy that really impresses me when looking at the film and looking at some of the, the deeper analytics stats. I really think that he pops with Lamar. I don't think he gets quite to that 27% target share number. I do think they elevate some guys. Isaiah Likely should factor in as a little bit of a very big wide receiver that could play the X or a big slot. And sometimes, Andrews could be split out wide, but I do think Bateman plays that X and the Z role very frequently. I think he's on there in almost all 2 wide receiver sets at least. So I'm really in on Bateman, and I think he has a pretty massive year.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like for me, it's like silly that he's not my breakout, but it was, we're doing it together. You like Devontae Smith, I like Rashad Bateman. It was just how it played out. But I mean, I love Rashad Bateman. Like he's wide receiver 33 on Football Guys ADP. I mean, I would take Bateman up in front of guys that are wide receiver 22. So I would have no problem taking him in front of DK Metcalf. I do all the time. So DK Metcalf's wide receiver 22 on Football Guys consensus. Brandon Cooks wide receiver 21. I'm taking Rashad Bateman over both of them. So that's like 11, 12 spots ahead of where his ADP is. I think there's conversations to be had with, all of those guys from DK to Hollywood Brown to Darnell Mooney, Amon-Ra. I mean, all these guys that are ranked ahead of him, I think there's definitely a conversation, Bateman or this guy. I choose Bateman pretty consistently. I mean, I would say I'm drafting Bateman more as my wide receiver 20 off the board. So that's kind of how I feel about him, and I think that he could break out even more than that. I mean, just the player, like you said, we all watch a lot of football. We all watch a lot of college football. Bateman is one of those guys that you watch him and he just is something that the Ravens haven't had in a long time. Can you think of the last true X wide receiver one that the Ravens have had? Because they don't really invest in him much. So it was kind of and me, I'm such a Lamar Jackson stan that I've wanted them to get a wide receiver for so long, and I've wanted them to invest in one. And they did with Hollywood Brown, but he, I just kind of thought that he was always very talented, but just not that prototype one type of guy. I was almost joking 2 years ago when Rashad Bateman came out, just being I would love Rashad Bateman to the Ravens. I would love Rashad Bateman to the Ravens. When it happened on draft day, I couldn't believe it because it's just so uncharacteristic of them to actually get a guy like him. Now they have him. I think it makes Lamar better. I think it makes, him have a breakout season. I think it's great for Mark Andrews because I think Rashad Bateman's going to garner a lot of attention because he's just so talented. So if you can't tell, I'm all in on Rashad Bateman. I'd rank him as a, wide receiver 2. I think that I wouldn't be really surprised how high he gets. I'm, just a big fan of his.
I totally agree. But let's move right along to our tight end breakouts as well. Both of these are guys that we've talked about a lot. So Go ahead and get us in on Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I'll talk about Cole Kmet, and it'll actually be pretty brief because there's really not that much to talk about. I mean, last year there really wasn't that much production. There was 0 touchdowns. There's not that much to, if you're in a league where people are looking back at last season to figure out what they're doing this season, you should be able to get Cole Kmet pretty late because he didn't really do much. But it's one of those things where we're talking about an offense that doesn't have many weapons. It's not that hard, I don't think, to predict who's going to be the 1 and 2 in the offense. I think it's going to be Darnell Mooney and it's going to be Cole Kmet. One of the things that I think that is important to think about in fantasy that sometimes ignored a little bit too much because it almost feels dirty to think about it because it's not great football, but it's garbage time points and it's garbage time stats. And do we think the Bears are going to be great this year? No. Do you think their defense is great this year? No. They're going to be winning a lot of games. They're going to be down a lot. Yes. So it was one of those things actually a couple of years ago. I was, and I'm wrong a lot too, but I was pretty in on the Chris Godwin hype train the year when he finally broke out. I, kept him in different leagues. I got him very cheap. He ended up as the wide receiver too. One of the big reasons I was very in on Godwin, and one of the big reasons he hit that season, was just Jameis just chucking it up at the end of games, just putting on garbage time stats. It's a different position, but we're talking about the Bears, who are probably going to be down a lot. Cole Kmet's going to be the second option. He's going as tight end 12. Guys going in front of him. Pat Freiermuth, who, I think you're going to talk about in a little bit. Dawson Knox. Zach Ertz, has my heart. Zach Ertz has my heart, but I don't know. I think that's kind of the borderline where Zach Ertz is the other one that I think if he stays healthy, he'll be a tight end 1 in the Arizona offense. After that, you start to talk about Dawson Knox, Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry, Irv Smith. All these guys are kind of in that same tier, but competition-wise, Cole Kmet has just much less. I mean, why don't we like Mike Gesicki, aside from, there are a couple things, but aren't we a little worried, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds, all these different options in that offense.
We could start with the fact that it's the fact that he has to block more than he ever has to, and he can't block.
Well, that's what I was saying. Amongst other options, just the crowded room. And then it's Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth has all these guys around him. Dawson Knox is like maybe the third, but also could be like the fourth target option. Like, we don't really know. Cole Kmet, as long as he's healthy, as long as he's out there, he should be the second option in this offense. Keep it easy and simple. He's going to score a touchdown this year if he's healthy, not more. So you don't have to worry about that. He's just one of the favorites, and it's not one of my, it's not like a sleeper. It's not somebody that nobody's talking about. A lot of people are talking about Cole Kmet being a sleeper tight end, but I think most of us are pretty well aware of when you get out of that elite tight end group, you're looking for guys like this, guys that can break out. And Cole Kmet has all the ancillary things that you need for it. Not much target competition. For me in offense, it's going to be chasing points a lot. And is he entering his third year now? So going into his third year, we're kind of at the point where it's got to happen now or never for me. So that's also part of it. I think he's going to break out, but if he doesn't, there's a big conversation about Cole Kmet because this is a perfect opportunity.
Yep, I definitely agree. And I'll go real quick into mine. Zach Ertz going at the tight end 10 right now is someone that, look, this is a guy that went tight end 5 last year or finished as a tight end 5. Now DeAndre Hopkins is gone for 6 games. AJ Green is another year older. Christian Kirk is gone. Why are we ranking him 5 spots behind where he finished last year in an offense that very, very suited to him? And now he has a full offseason program to get really familiar with the concepts of the air raid offense. It kind of boggles my mind. Like, Ertz was one of the most targeted guys in the red zone last season. He ranked He ranked 6th in the NFL with 18 red zone targets, and he only caught 7 of those balls. So think of he actually has on target from Kyler Murray, who struggled a little bit with accuracy problems. But again, that contract is sure to make him feel a little happy there. Ertz is a guy that still has very sure hands at the age of 31. He is definitely, on his way, definitely, later into his career, but we've seen sure-handed guys stick around. Travis Kelce is 34. Ertz had the 4th most receptions in the NFL last year with 74. Like, that's a ton for him. 112 targets. When have you seen a tight end that has at least 110 targets not finish as a tight end, a high tight end 1? It very rarely happens. So Ertz is a guy that doesn't give you a huge ceiling. Like, he's not finishing inside the top 5, most likely. I have him at tight end 5. I wouldn't say he's not beating out any of Kittle or not Kittle. He's not beating out any of Pitts, Andrews, or Kelce. He's most likely not beating out Waller. I could see him beating out Kittle depending on Kittle's usage. That's a story for another day.
Kittle hater.
Story for another day. In any case, the guy that gets targeted at a 21 or 27% rate in that crowded out of an offense last year is not seeing that number go down anytime soon. So Ertz is the kind of guy that's going to get you a very consistent floor. That's all we're looking for at the tight end position, by the way. We're looking for that, 9 to 10 points per game at the very least, and then a touchdown will get you to that 15, 16 number, which is absolutely coveted for tight ends. So go ahead, draft Zach Ertz, win your leagues because you're making it easy on yourself.
Yeah, I'll just give one quick point on the Ertz one is I think that if you're playing in more like casual leagues with more redraft leagues, I mean, I think you're going to get Ertz at like a much bigger discount because so many people are still concerned with like, or at least distracted by the narratives that Ertz was washed, like it was kind of like people kind of thought it ended when he left Philadelphia. I feel like the general consensus did. So I think Zach Ertz might be at a little bit better value in some of those more casual leagues than he is in some of the people that are realizing that Zach Ertz is still alive and well. So moving on to our fades at quarterback. So I kind of hate doing this, but quarterback's tough, man. And for anybody listening to this, go through the top 15 quarterbacks and tell me which one you really don't like because it's a tough thing to do. But my fade's going to be Matthew Stafford, who's QB 12. If you're playing in a 12-team league, I mean, that's kind of right on the borderline of is he going to be the QB1 or somebody that you're kind of streaming week to week. Guys going around him, Russell Wilson, Trey Lance, who was my breakout, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. I view Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, kind of in the same tier, those four, because I think that the Trey Lance, Russell Wilson, those guys are a bit above. And then the Tua, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, upside, but a little bit below in terms of their floor. So my tier right there would be a Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, and Derek Carr. When I'm doing that, I'm looking at kind of what they have going on. The Rams I feel like everything went right for the Rams last year. Still have great weapons. You have Cooper Kupp, you have Allen Robinson, you probably have a strong run game. Matthew Stafford's coming in with some injury concerns, and the Rams also have a strong defense. So I don't think the Rams are going to really be trailing that much. I think they're going to be in control of most games. Matthew Stafford's going to do what he has to do, but I don't see him as somebody who's necessarily going to light up fantasy this year. And some of those options that are going around him, I just think have better opportunities of doing that. Derek Carr has got a loaded offense in Las Vegas. Kirk Cousins, new offensive coordinator going from LA, but he's got a lot of weapons there. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, back-to-back MVP who we're ranking as, QB 13 again. So I think Matthew Stafford's my fade based on the injury, the uncertainty, and just kind of the guys going around him. So I don't think he's a full fade, but I just prefer some of the other quarterbacks. So who's your QB fade here going into 2022?
Yeah, mine is someone who I've kind of harped on a lot. I do think it's warranted. Everyone, yells at me about his rushing coming back off the ankle injury, but Dak Prescott is in a tough situation this year. Not only has he lost Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson, not only is his offensive line in shambles compared to previous years, he lost CeeDee Lamb today. CeeDee Lamb had stitches in his foot. He wouldn't say what it was from, kind of sheepish when a reporter asked him about it. Didn't really want to talk about it. There's a good chance it's probably an NFI. Look, foot injuries do not mix well with wide receivers. I don't care if it's minor or not. He wasn't wearing a walking boot for what it's worth. He was, he's kind of hanging around, but he didn't practice today. That's somewhat notable to me. The fact that he got stitches in his foot. I don't know how much that affects him going into games, but look, I've seen foot injuries with wide receivers before. They kind of use those things a lot, to run and cut. So wide receiver foot injury, not helping the fact that offense has been decimated by people leaving and people getting injured this year. So with only Jalen Tolbert as the remaining healthy wide receiver, I'm officially worried about Dak. And I was worried before. He's my QB 14 this year. I just think that he's being ranked way too highly as the QB 9 right now. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense that you're ranking him above Trey Lance. It doesn't make a lot of sense that you're ranking him above Derek Carr, who's basically the same thing but has a ton better weapons. Same thing with Kirk Cousins. Like none of that makes sense to me. I'd have Russell Wilson ahead of him with the improved weapons in Denver, combined with the fact that Russ can run. Like, I think you're ranking Dak based on previous years and previous talent, which I don't really understand. Dalton Schultz is okay. He's not crazy good. Like that doesn't really impress me. So Dak is definitely a fade for me, just based on the fact that I think you're drafting him for at his absolute ceiling, and I don't see him really doing anything much more than QB9. I think it's much more likely that he kind of tumbles down a little bit.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that one either. And again, it's just one of those things where we're talking about the top 10 to 12 quarterbacks. It's tough to find, but you got to poke holes in somebody there to pick a fade at quarterback. And Dak Prescott's one also. I'm not picking based around some of the guys going around him, like you said. I mean, I'd take Russell Wilson over him as well.
Yep.
And moving on to our running backs. So mine is Nick Chubb, which is, one of the funny conversations between football, real football and fantasy football. I mean, Nick Chubb, probably one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best pure runner in the league. I mean, when you watch football, when you watch Nick Chubb, he is awesome. But fantasy-wise, he does have a ceiling. He doesn't do everything that we want for a fantasy running back. He doesn't catch a lot of passes. Right now, the offense, I mean, if you asked me, Deshaun Watson's not playing this year. That's just my opinion. I don't think he is. We'll see how that goes. But an offense led by Jacoby Brissett, or let's joke about it, Josh Rosen, maybe? No. So offense led by Jacoby Brissett, with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, to Ernest Johnson backfield, and not too many weapons. I just don't know that they're going to be scoring that many points, and Nick Chubb's going to have to do a lot on his own to make that happen, which he's fully capable of breaking off some big runs, but just don't see the Browns being in a lot of scoring opportunities. Like my theme, a lot of this, show has been kind of talking about the guys around him. I just don't get it. I guess I don't. Not that I don't get it. Nick Chubb is so talented, but I mean, he's going before Leonard Fournette. He's going before James Conner. I mean, I'm taking Travis Etienne over Nick Chubb, which I know that you disagree with. But I think Nick Chubb is super talented, more so belongs in like the RB15 to RB20 conversation for me. Look at like Ezekiel Elliott. I don't love Ezekiel Elliott, but he's RB15, 3 running backs behind Nick Chubb. I don't think that those two have like that much different upside. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott deals with Tony Pollard. Nick Chubb deals with Kareem Hunt. Dallas offense probably a little bit more potent, yet we're taking Nick Chubb above Ezekiel Elliott. Leonard Fournette, RB14 on here is kind of crazy to me. I know in best ball he's going as more of like RB9, so a little bit of a discrepancy there. But still, I love Nick Chubb, the talent. I think if you take him as an RB2, that's fine, but you don't want to necessarily be taking players that, he's ADP's RB12 and he might finish as RB10. You want to be taking guys who maybe his ADP's RB12, like you said with Saquon, RB9 maybe, but his upside's RB1. Nick Chubb doesn't really have that in his range of possibilities. So I'm taking guys around him over Nick Chubb pretty consistently. I really don't have any of him on like 100+ teams. So love the player, just not a huge fan of his situation for fantasy. So I'll kick it to you. Who is your RB fade?
Yep, my RB fade is someone I've been fading for now 3 years, and I got pretty burned on it the last couple of years. Look, I'm not stupid. Derrick Henry would have been the RB1 last year if he had finished the season. I count that as nothing more than a fluke that he got injured, and my fade was obviously, correct there when it comes to a points over the course of the season thing. Like I'm not ignorant. Like, but here's the problem. Derrick Henry's efficiency has been dropping since 2019. First in the league among backs with 100 carries in 2019, averaging 4.16 yards after carry per contact. Pretty self-explanatory stat there. Basically, after you get contacted, it's the yards you gain. Henry with the pretty famous stiff arm, kind of, pretty self-explanatory there. 2020, he was first once again, but it dropped to 3.85 yards per carry after contact. In 2021, Henry's yards per contact dropped by more than half a yard to 3.28, which ranked 10th among backs with at least 100 carries. PFF also gives backs an elusivity rating, obviously a PFF stat that measures the success and impact of a runner with the ball independent of the blocking. So it's basically, what you can do on your own and like how good you are at not being brought down. Henry's grade was 77.3 in 2019, tied for 5th in the NFL. In 2020, it was 73.7, dropped good for 5th again. But in the 8 games that he played last season, his elusive rating dropped to 49.8. That ranked 27th among backs with at least 100 carries. And his teammate, Deonta Foreman, ranked 19th at 55.8. So it wasn't really good to see. Henry was getting a sick workload last year. He was on pace for nearly 400 carries. You never want to see that in your 27-year-old running back. He's 28 now. Nothing really, stands out to me about Henry's situation this year. I know we say trust the talent, but I can't ignore a situation that is this bad. AJ Brown is gone. A couple pieces of the Titans offensive line are gone. Roger Saffold is gone. Taylor Lewan is another year older and wasn't that great last year. AJ Brown is, of course, gone to our Eagles, and he's replaced by Treylon Burks, who is missing camp practices, has had some asthma issues. I'm not saying that's going to affect him, but look, he's not AJ Brown. Let's get that through our heads. Robert Woods is still coming off the ACL, and while he's good, he's never been a wide receiver one. He's always been more of a complimentary wide receiver. And then after that, there's really nothing else. Henry was always one of the best running backs against stacked boxes. He obviously, has ranked really great against that stat. And if I can find it, I'm looking for it now. But I don't think, his average defenders in the box last year was only 6.4. He didn't face a lot of stacked boxes. Obviously, he's very good against that stacked front carry. It's 4th in the NFL. But here's the problem. Derrick Henry is only getting older, and this age cliff was not invented because, there were running backs that really outranged it. Derrick Henry could be an outlier, but I just don't see it for him. He ranked 31st in yards created per touch last season with only 2.46. That's a far cry from where he's been ranking in the top 10 in previous years. So I expect Henry to not only not finish at his RB4 ADP, but he could fall out of the top 10 entirely, and it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I think I feel similarly to you, where it feels crazy to be like, oh, I'm fading Derrick Henry, or Derrick Henry isn't going to do this, isn't going to do that. Again, I'm just trying to put myself in the situation of all these drafts that we've done, and I don't pick Derrick Henry. Like when he's on the board with the guys that are around him, I'm consistently picking Dalvin Cook. I'm consistently picking Najee, Eckler, obviously CMC, Jonathan Taylor. So that's what it comes down to for me. That's really what fading means. It doesn't mean that you're just out on the player in general. It's, well, are you drafting him around the guys that he's going around? No, I'm not. So I do agree with you there. Am I going to be surprised if Derrick Henry has an awesome season if he's fully healthy? Absolutely not. He's an animal. But am I picking him? I'm not. So I don't disagree with you there. And moving on to our fades at wide receiver, I know we disagree a little bit on this. I don't love doing it, and I don't feel right about it because I am typically wrong about this certain player, but cheers to doing it again. I am fading Adam Thielen, wide receiver 30. Going back to some of the players going around him, I'm just picking guys ahead of him. You talked about Rashad Bateman as your breakout wide receiver. Rashad Bateman's going like a couple wide receivers behind Thielen. I'm taking Rashad Bateman ahead of him. I'm taking Darnell Mooney, Juju, Amon-Ra, Michael Thomas, Hollywood Brown. A lot of these guys that are surrounding Adam Thielen, I consistently am drafting over him. I don't really touch him. I'm also a little bit excited about KJ Osborne, who we saw really start to break out at the beginning of last season. Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Rams now, supposed to be bringing that Rams system over there that uses 3 wide receivers. I think it'll be kind of interesting the first couple weeks to monitor really who is the wide receiver 2 behind Justin Jefferson, because I think KJ Osborne's a good player, young player. Adam Thielen has struggled a little bit with injuries. At the same time, it's impossible to ignore his prowess for the red zone. He scores a lot of touchdowns, and I don't think that's by accident. I think Kirk Cousins does look at him in the red zone. So that's the part that scares me a little bit. When talking about touchdowns, though, probably the least, predictable stat, the least sticky stat. So, a couple of those touchdowns go elsewhere. Not going to be great for our boy Adam Thielen. Wide receiver 30, Doesn't feel unfair. I'm not surprised why he's ranked there, but again, I'm fading him at that ADP just based on the players going around him.
Yeah, I think Thielen is a little bit of an, a very interesting case. Look, I saw a comment earlier tonight on another show. He's, wide receiver 12 in points per game over the last 2 years. I mean, he always seems to put up clutch numbers. The problem is he runs into these nicks and bruises every single season, and it inevitably costs him. And, Justin Jefferson is not even near his prime yet. Like, he is by far one of the best three wide receivers in the NFL. It's not close. This passing offense is only going to get better this year, and that's where I have my main problem. Kevin O'Connell is going to switch this offense out of the Stone Age that Mike Zimmer kept it in and move to more three wide receiver sets. You're going to see Adam Thielen on the field a ton alongside KJ Osborne and Justin Jefferson. And with the Rams system going into place, that wide receiver 2 has a huge role in the offense, and Adam Thielen thrives in those kind of weak coverage against him roles. So I definitely see Adam Thielen going well. He's my I actually just edited it. He is my RB or my wide receiver 26 right now. And look, I mean, I'm not, I don't think he's going to break out or anything, but I do think that, fading Thielen is definitely a very risky move just because of how much trust that Kirk Cousins actually has in him. Moving on to my guy, we're going to Cleveland and to Amari Cooper. Now, this is pretty straightforward. It all depends on Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson settles and takes what we assume to be a 10 or 12 game suspension with a massive fine, Cooper, gets some help for the playoffs and boosts his stats a little bit. But if we assume that Deshaun Watson gets suspended for the full 17 games, which I also think that's what it ends up being, Cooper is kind of dusty. Like we've already known that Cooper is very boomer bust, and that was with a quarterback like Dak Prescott over the past few years. And even last year he had 7 games where he didn't even get over 10 fantasy points. So that's a little bit of an issue, especially when you have a quarterback like Jacoby Brissett or Jimmy Garoppolo, whoever it ends up being in Cleveland. But Amari Cooper is just not someone you can trust. He's going as the right now our wide receiver 26 in PPR, and I'm just not okay with that. I'm not okay to put this guy as a wide receiver 2 right now. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all whatsoever. And we really need to be prepared that Deshaun Watson misses this entire season, and that Cooper is nothing more than a somewhat usable wide receiver 3. He might have a spikes week. Let's call him Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett had 3 or 4 huge breakout weeks last year where he scored multiple touchdowns, and then the rest of the weeks he's borderline unusable. Does that make sense? Some weeks he's usable, but most of them the offense is just so bad that the only reliable option on a weekly basis is Nick Chubb, and there's not even a ceiling there. So just this offense in general is so like kind of untouchable for me right now without Deshaun Watson. Until we see him there, that I just don't want to see it.
I haven't drafted Amari Cooper on one team this entire offseason, so I'm fully on board with you. I don't love the uncertainty of this whole Brown situation in general. I agree with you. I don't love Amari Cooper in general. Is he super talented? Yes, for sure. I mean, great at Alabama. He's had tons of moments in the NFL where he shows that he's really talented, but he's a streaky player, like you said. I mean, he has big games, and it feels like he disappears, which is kind of weird for a guy like him, where I feel like he's almost always open. I mean, he's a great route runner, and there's tons of tape to show that. I mean, he's an awesome player, but this situation's weird. I think there's got to be some consideration to like what the Cowboys got back for Amari Cooper. I mean, unless that was just like a
I don't think so. No, that was just because they knew that they had to get rid of him to fix
no,
their
for
salary
sure,
cap.
for
They
sure.
had no
But I'm
choice.
saying, sure, but you have a choice to get a little bit more than what they did. What they did was, what did they do? Like swapped like
It was a fifth. It was a fifth and swapped to six, I think.
Yeah, come on now. They had to have been able to get a little bit more if Amari Cooper was still the same player that I think he once was. And I think that's got to come into consideration that not only is his situation not great, but I mean, the
His
guy just got
contract
sold
is
for,
so bad.
yeah, the guy just got sold for a bag of peanuts, which, like, to me, is interesting. I mean, you can get more for a guy that's a good player. And I think Amari has all the skills. I just don't know that he's the same guy that we saw a couple of years ago,
Yep.
and the situation is so weird. So I'm on
Yep.
board with you. I haven't touched Amari Cooper all offseason. And we're
Yep.
going to breakout tight or fade tight ends. Mine, which I don't think you agree with, just based on some of our conversations, but mine's Dalton Schultz. Just because for me, it's really like one of these elite tight ends, or I'm trying to grab like maybe 2 or 3 later on to see which one can break out. Dalton Schultz to me screams last season more as like kind of an opportunity type of breakout. I mean, we weren't sure about him or Blake Jarwin. Dalton Schultz kind of took advantage of the situation. Had a good season, not as good as it looks on paper, I would say. Is like, what did he finish as tight end 3 on the season? He didn't statistically have that sort of season. Darren Waller out, George Kittle. Like, I mean, Dalton Schultz just really didn't have one of those elite seasons where it actually, to what it reflects, his season long finish. I'm taking Dallas Goedert and TJ Hawkinson over Dalton Schultz. And so if I kind of miss out over those top 5, the Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, Kittle, Waller, I'm either taking Dallas Goedert or hardly Hawkinson, but still Hawkinson over Schultz. And then if I miss on those guys, I mean, I'm waiting and getting like a Cole Kmet and Irv Smith, Hunter Henry, those sort of later guys. So Dalton Schultz kind of falls into me. I guess I would call it almost a tight end dead zone if
Yeah.
if you
And I
coined
kind
it
of
that.
agree. I kind of agree with that. I mean, I said earlier that I wasn't really that impressed with Dalton Schultz. I have him as tight end 7 because look, let's be honest, like he's gonna get targeted like just by necessity. But he again, like I said about that entire Cowboys offense, doesn't feel like it has any ceiling whatsoever to it. So I mean, I have him behind, Kittle, Ertz, Waller, Pitts, Andrews, Kelsey. Pretty standard. The only surprise in there is Ertz, obviously. So like for a lot of people, Schultz is 5 or 6.
Yeah,
Do
he's
I have
6 in
any?
ADP. Yeah.
Yeah, like do I have any like argument for that? Not really. Like, do I want him? Not really. Like he's safe. He's very safe. Like,
Sure, that's
he'll get you like 65 catches for 800 yards and like 5 touchdowns, and that'll be fine. And that'll probably get him to tight end 6. It
yeah,
might
that's
even get him to tight end 5, but it's not getting him any higher than that. So I understand the fade. I like it. Like I'm not that into it.
yeah, I agree with you. It's not that he doesn't belong where he's placed in terms of the ADP. I don't necessarily mind that. It's just I'm looking at other positions at that point if I miss out on those top guys. So he is a
Yep.
fade for me in that sense.
Lastly, my guy is Pat Fryermuth, and I feel bad for Fryermuth because I really like him and he played really, really well last season. It's kind of just unfortunate that the Steelers are the nuts at drafting wide receivers. They really just are the best team in the NFL at drafting wide receivers, and they drafted 2 this year. Calvin Austin, who probably doesn't play a significant role, but still will play some role, and then George Pickens, who just got that dog in him. He's gonna be the guy. Like Pickens. Here's the thing with Fryermuth. And I'm taking this straight from my buddy Andrew Cooper, who is the tight end whisperer over at Fantasy Alarm. Great guy, very smart, big tight end guy. And his thoughts on Fryermuth are basically simply this. If Fryermuth is to be a tight end 1 this year and make it inside the top 10, he basically has to be the second target on this offense. That means beating out one of Chase Claypool, George Pickens, or Calvin Austin, or Najee Harris. He's just not going to do that. Besides the fact that, I mean, he had 80 targets last year. That's pretty good, like really good for a rookie. And they definitely came like across the middle of the season when he kind of, scooped up to that, 70% target share where he was, he had 6 straight weeks where he saw at least 1 red zone target. And he had that stretch from week 8 to week 14 where he scored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6 touchdowns in those 6 weeks. that was a really good stretch for him, but it compiled for almost all of his production in that group, and he just isn't consistent enough in this offense. This offense just can't support everyone that's in it as well as Freiermuth. Deontay Johnson is still going to get his 130, 140, maybe 150 targets. The QB situation is awful. That can't be understated. Najee Harris is still going to get some of his dump offs. Trubisky's theirs to the running back position less, but not enough to where I would say that Najee falls out of that rotation. And one of Chase Claypool or George Pickens is going to be the X receiver in that offense and get all the downfield looks. Freiermuth can sneak in a red zone target here or there, but there is no, I don't see his numbers getting to where they were last year. He ranked first in the NFL in red zone targets last year with 20. Like, do you really see that happening this year? Because I don't. Like,
Yeah, he seems like someone who's really touchdown dependent to me. And when
mhm.
you kind of like break it down like he did, and it's being touchdown dependent in an offense that has a lot of targets that are probably ahead of you in probably a low scoring offense, or at least one that we're expecting to not be so efficient with Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky. It's just tough. It just seems like kind of a tough thing to predict. And what I like for Freiermuth, like, I mean, I hate to use this term, but a little bit like a better and best ball type thing. You know, if you have like 3 tight ends and you have Freiermuth, I don't mind that because I think he will get some red zone looks. It's like kind of like, you know, targets are earned. It's like, well, he must have done something to get 20 red zone looks. At the same time, I don't want to have to be putting him in my lineup every single week, hoping that he maybe scores a touchdown, you know?
Yep.
And that's how a lot of those late round tight ends are for sure. But he's kind of on that borderline where he's right in that like tight end 1 range. He's not really one of the late round guys. So if he were a little bit later, I'd be all over Freiermuth. But kind of where he goes based on what he did last year, I just don't know if he's going to be able to replicate that. And if we're so worried about Deontay Johnson and what he's going to do without Big Ben, I mean, Freiermuth, like you said, 20 targets in the red zone for Big Ben. I mean,
Not
that
happening.
was, yeah, he's putting on blinders and looking for Freiermuth,
Yep.
which is fine, but I don't know that it's going to happen another year. So I'm
Yep.
with you.
And if you want to wait on tight end, just wait for Cole Kmet. He goes one later. Like that's and 18 spots later
Yeah,
in
exactly. Like one
you
tight
know
end later and like a round and
like
a half.
MFL,
So
he goes 10 spots later. Real time sports, he goes 7 spots later. Fantasy football calculator, 20 spots later.
yeah,
It's just not close for me. And Freiermuth does fall into that kind of spot where I just don't want to draft a tight end. Like he falls into that uncomfortable like 12 to 15 range where just none of those are guys that excite me at all whatsoever. So I'm just
sure.
not going to draft him and hope that he does well. This is just not the offense for him. But that's going to do it for us this episode, guys. We're closing on the regular season. Next week we'll be back, find some more redraft topics to talk about, have some fun guests hopefully planned for next week and the week after. And then we will see you guys next week. And we'll see you on the flip side. Thanks for tuning in.